Hey guys, it's Ms. Miner, and I think today's lesson is going to go pretty quick. What I want to do with this lesson is we want to be able to write a math expression or an equation using either symbols or words. So what this helps us do is it starts helping us get used to looking for words that mean math things. Okay, so we're kind of working with this. I found that this lesson really helps us get used to working with or recognizing those words in like word problems. When we have word problems or when we see things out in the real world, we recognize these as math statements, and that we can use these words in order to help us start kind of relating things in the real world back to what we're doing in math. And so today we're going to be working with some verbal, what we call verbal expressions. And they're just words that mean math stuff, right? And so what we're doing here is we're just going to create some words or think of some words that mean the same thing as some of our math operations that we have. And what I'd like you to do is when we do this, I want you to kind of go out in the real world or when you're talking to a friend and start recognizing how often you say some of these things. And so let's just kind of create a list here of words that we use in the real world or other words that we use to say the same thing. So thinking about what you ought to do right now maybe is just pause the video and try and come up with as many words as you can that mean the same as multiply. I'm going to go over some of the words with you, but try and come up with some of your own. So pause the video right now and think about all of the words that you can list that mean the same thing as multiply. Okay, hopefully you did that, and let's just go over some of the words that mean the same thing as multiply. Obviously, if I see in a word problem or I see out in the real world the word product, that's another word that we use to represent the answer for like a multiply problem, right? We get the product. That's kind of a mathy word. But one of the other words that we use a lot that means the same thing as multiply is we say, hey, I'm going to double this recipe. And what you're really going to do when you double something is multiply everything by 2, right? So double is another word that signals out in the real world or in your real life or even in a word problem at school that you're going to be multiplying something. The word double. And so then, of course, triple, quadruple, any of those kinds of words, they mean we're going to multiply. Another word that we use a lot is twice. Twice means 2 times, right? And so that's another word that we use. But another word we use is by. 3 by 2 or 4 by 4, right? Those are things that we say in the real world, and that means we're multiplying. Okay, so now I want to do the same thing. So these are just some examples. There's other words, but I'm just going to give you a list of things that I thought of, a list of words that I came up with that mean the same thing. And so what we want to do is we want to start recognizing those words. And these are just some that I came up with. You might have even more that you thought of. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Pause the video right now and come up with a list of words that means divide. This website down here in class, we're going to use this website to kind of create a word web of all of the words that we come up with. So you're welcome to do that if you're at home doing this online as well. But another way is just make a list of the words that you can come up with that mean the same thing as divide. So pause the video right now and try and think up some words that you can think of that mean divide. Okay, I'm going to go over, hopefully you paused the video and came up with a list of your own words, but I'm going to go over some that I thought of. Some of the things that we talk about in the real world is the quotient. When we talk about divide, we say that the answer to a division problem is the quotient, so you might be asked to find the quotient. But that is also kind of a mathy word. A lot of the times we just say it's divided by or divided into. Another thing that we say is like 3/2. We use the word over to represent division. And here's I said into before, but I say 3/4 or 24/3, something like that. But then there's more common words that we use that mean divide. Have you ever said half? I only need half of something, or 1/4. All of those times when we're talking about fractions, that means divide in the real world. I'm going to split this in half. Well, you're dividing it in two. That is division in the real world. And so when we hear these words, take half of something, that means divide. So those are some that I thought of. We could say take a third. That's another one. Any of those fraction words that we use, those are all division words. Okay. Let's do the same thing for add and subtract. I want you to pause the video. I want you to come up with all the words that you can think of that might mean add or subtract. So do these last two. Hopefully you paused the video and came up with some words. I'm just going to create a list here of some things that I thought of. And then I have a couple of things here that maybe we didn't think of. So let's do subtract first. Subtract, some of the things that I thought of were minus. We say minus a lot. We say decreased. We say less than. You have 3 less than me. Fewer. There's 3 fewer in this package, right? So we're subtracting 3 from the other package that we were talking about. And then also here is a list of words that I came up with, oh, not that one, that also mean subtract. So I'm going to let me just see if I can move some of these words over here just a little bit so that we have some more room. Here's some that we talk a lot about in the real world where they mean subtract. We hear them, but we don't always think about them as being subtracting, right? Like a withdrawal, a bank withdrawal. The markets are falling. In the real world, the word fall, withdraw, a loss, right? I'm going to take a loss in my business this year on my taxes. Below, right? It's below some value, some market value maybe. Overdrawn in my checking account means I have less than, or negative. Ooh, that's another good word. Negative. That means the same as subtract. Okay. Spends is another good word that means subtract. So these are all words that we use in the real world that mean subtract. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with add. Hopefully you created your own list already with add. Plus, right? Increased. Some. More than. Greater than. And then here's another list that I came up with of things that we hear in the real world that mean add, right? And some of these are rise. The markets are rising, so they're adding, they're increasing, right? Deposit. I'm putting money into my checking account, so that is adding to the money that's already there. Earns. Above. More. He has 5 more than me. So those are all words that we hear about. A gain. So I'm gaining something. I'm adding to it. Those are all words that mean add in the real world. And we hear these words all the time, and we don't think so much about it being math words, but they are. These are all words that we use in the real world to signify that some kind of math is happening. Okay, so what about these symbols here? What are some words that we use to represent these symbols? What do we even call them? This is an equals sign, right? And you can do the same thing. Maybe pause the video and go through and create a list of words that signify these things. But I'm just going to create a short list for equals. Oh, I got to get back to my pen here. This is the equals sign. And other words that also mean equals are is. This is a biggie. We always say it is something. The same as. If we say something is the same as, we're saying that it's equal to, right? So these are words that mean equals in the real world. This next one over is an inequality sign. And remember, if it's pointing in this direction, it's kind of signifying that it's less than. So in words, we say this is less than something else. And here's the key thing. When we're working with word problems, what you want to look for in order to know whether this is subtract or an inequality sign is the is. That word is going to be so important when you're looking for whether or not you're supposed to do a subtract, because a subtract could also be less than, right? We could say 3 less than 4, and I'm talking about subtraction. But if I say 3 is less than 4, then I'm talking about symbolizing 3 is less than 4. And that is a true statement, but I'm talking about as far as it is not equal to, it is less than. So I listen for, or I look for that word is to be able to distinguish whether or not I'm talking about subtraction or an inequality. Same thing over here. This would be is greater than. And again, I'm going to look for the word is to be able to tell the difference between addition or an inequality here. That key word is, that's so important because that signifies whether or not I'm setting this up as being a kind of like a comparison versus a subtraction or an addition. Okay. And then same thing over here. This one, I'm just going to put an arrow down here because I'm running out of room. This one would be is less than or equal to. And this one here would be is greater than or equal to. Oops, I spelled that wrong. And we always want to look for this comparison that's being made right here. It'll include the word is. We can't make a comparison without saying it is either bigger or smaller, right? So here is smaller than, right? Is bigger than. Is smaller or equal to, is bigger or larger, right? Is larger. And we can use these other words to say the same thing, is larger or equal to this. But they all essentially, if it has this is word in there, we're making a comparison versus making an addition or a subtraction from. Okay, so look for the is when you're dealing with inequalities. Okay, so here's the tricky part. Sometimes when we're doing verbal expressions or word problems, we run into, when am I supposed to put parentheses in there? Okay, and here's a trick. If I see a sentence that looks like this, 3 times the, and then we're going to insert some kind of like math word in here. So I could say sum, or I could say product, That's what's happening inside the parentheses. So if I say sum, as for an example, right? So the word I'm going to insert here is going to be sum. I'm saying 3 times the sum. And because I'm totaling something or adding to something, that's going to be inside parentheses. Because I'm saying it's times the answer to, or a combination of numbers. And so I have to somehow signify that those numbers are being put together before I do the times, right? And so this is kind of the sentence that we'll see when we're talking about parentheses. 3 times the sum of a number that we don't know and 6, let's say. And so the number and 6 are what's getting summed, and so they go inside the parentheses. I want to figure out what that sum is, or it could be a different word here. It could be the product of. And then I would have to have multiplication happening up here, right? Or it could say the difference. And then I would have to have subtraction up here. So then this is kind of the key that we're looking for here. 3 times the difference of, so now I'm going to say this is 3 times, right? So I'm putting the 3 so that it gets distributed. 3 times the difference of a number and 6 is, let's say 20. So if I see these words that look like this, where I'm talking about I want to combine 2 numbers a certain way, a difference, a product, a quotient, and I'm combining 2, or sometimes it's even more numbers than that, but in the ones we're working with today, this is kind of what it will look like. If I am multiplying or dividing or adding to the combination of some other numbers, then I'm talking about I have to put that combination in parentheses. Okay, so let's do another one here. Let's erase this. Let's do another one here. Let's say I might be saying 6 minus the sum of a number and 4 is negative 16. Okay, so now we want to write that. Well, you can see I'm making a combination over here. I'm summing the number and 4, and then I'm minusing 6 from that. So I want to make that be in parentheses because I want to make sure I identify that I'm combining over here. Here's my combining that's happening. Sorry, let me just do this. Here's my combining that's happening here. So I want to do something like this. 6 minus, then I want to put a sum in here. A number and 4, okay, is going to be negative 16. So if I were writing this out in a mathy way, it would look something like this. 6 minus the sum of these things. So I'm combining those two together. That's just an example, but you're looking for, it's telling you to combine right here, you know, the sum of. So you want to combine those first, and that's how you'll know when you need to put parentheses into a problem, okay? It'll have a situation happening kind of like what's happening up here, where I have some combination of numbers happening. That means I need to put parentheses in there. So here's another tricky part. If it said, and we kind of talked about this already, but if it says it is greater than, well, I'm sorry, I thought I could move those around. If it says it is greater than, oh, I see what we're doing. Oh, sorry. It's been a little while since I taught this lesson. I can move those around. Okay, so I want to put these in order. Is greater than, I kind of want to match these up, right? What would it be if it just said less than? Well, of course, then is subtraction. And remember, the key word here is the word is. That's going to be an inequality, right? So greater than would be addition. 4 greater than 7. There was no is in there. So I'm adding 4 to 7. But if I say 7 is greater than 4, then I'm talking about a comparison, and I have the word is in there, and then I know I'm talking about an inequality. So always check for the is to know whether or not you're talking about addition and subtraction versus inequalities. All right, so here's a way to check yourself. Pause the video and see if you can write this problem up here as a verbal expression. Come up with some way to write that out in words. And then do the opposite. Take this verbal expression and write it as a mathematical expression. Pause the video now and try it out for yourself. Okay, I hope you did that. There's lots of different correct answers here. But if I were going to write this out, I'd probably just say this is 3 times a number, 3 times a number, plus 4 is 10. Okay, so that might be, times a number. That might be one way that I could do it. Or another way maybe that I could write this out is something like this. 4 more than 3 times a number is 10. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways. There are lots more ways that we can maybe say this, right? Maybe I could say this is 4 more than, let's see, I want to use the word triple. Triple add 4 to triple a number. Is the same as. So there's another way that we could maybe write it. So see, there's lots of ways that we can use these words to come up with kind of a verbal expression or almost a semi-word problem. It's not really a real world context yet, but we're just trying to use these words that mean the same as something in math so that when we do see them out in the real world, we kind of recognize those words. And it does, thinking this way does help me look for these words when I'm dealing with word problems in the future. It's just a way to kind of train our brain to see those numbers when we either read them or hear somebody say them. Okay, so now we want to write a mathematical expression. This is 4 less than 3 times a number. Okay, so I definitely know that I'm timesing a number by 3 here. Right? So I'm just going to say 3 times a number is 3x. And then I want 4 less than that. So I'm going to subtract 4. And I know that this is subtract. Why? Because it doesn't have the is, right? It just says less than. And then all I have to do is equals 42. And there is my mathematical expression. We're just training our brain to kind of see those things a little bit better and to recognize those words when we hear them out in the real world. So keep practicing. You're going to do your assignment today, and I know you're going to do great work.